Number 8. Susan Lawrence. 35-year-old Ajik Al Owens and her neighbor, 58-year-old Susan Lawrence, were at odds with one another for years before their long-running rivalry erupted into deadly violence in their Ocala, Florida community. According to reports, Lawrence frequently complained about Owens' children allegedly playing in her yard. Records show that law enforcement began responding to calls about problems between the two women in 2021. Then, between February 2022 and April 2023, Lawrence called the police at least 7 times to complain about children in the neighborhood. One afternoon during the summer of 2023, one of Owens' children accused Lawrence of throwing a pair of skates at them. Owens went to Lawrence's house to confront her about the situation, and what began as a verbal altercation between the neighbors quickly became physical as Lawrence fired a gun through her front door, fatally striking Owens. Lawrence claimed that she acted in self-defense, but authorities were unwilling to accept her story at face value. After concluding that they lacked enough evidence to pursue a murder case, prosecutors charged Lawrence with manslaughter. She pleaded not guilty, but the case is ongoing. Number 7. Brawl between Scottish women. In a bizarre brawl between neighbours that was captured on camera in April 2023, 2 Scottish women got into a fight in their front yards in Greenock, Inverclyde, for reasons that remain unclear. The footage was filmed by 40-year-old Stuart McLean, who lives nearby and went outside with his phone on record when he overheard the altercation taking place. The video showed one of the women walking toward the other with a bucket full of water while shouting obscenities at the other, and as the two met in what appeared to be the middle of a path between their properties, their disagreement became physical. The bucket-wielding woman attempted to dump water on her adversary, but she failed miserably, with most of the liquid spilling all over the pavement rather than onto her neighbor. They continued shouting at each other as a fist fight broke out between the opponents. It was clear based on his laughter that McLean thoroughly enjoyed the strange sight as it unfolded before his eyes. As the fight continued, one woman's pants fell down to her ankles, and she didn't let it stop her from trying to gain the upper hand. The struggle went on until the weight of the larger woman sent the duo tumbling into the yard of a nearby property. By then, several other neighbors had come outside to watch the chaos. While it's unclear who won the fight, the internet went wild with speculation, along with remarks on how the fight reflected just another day in Greenock, Scotland. Number 6. Russell Jones. In 2022, 62-year-old Russell Jones got into a dispute with his elderly neighbor, Robert Burns, over some garbage that was blocking a parking space outside their homes in Liverpool, England. Their differences only grew from there. Russell became deeply offended when Robert's wife, Wendy, allegedly called him a weirdo, and he spent months brewing over it before he and Robert once again came face to face. Robert and Wendy were outside walking one day when they saw Russell pounding his fist against his own vehicle while yelling, "Glass houses, glass houses." They were unsure what he meant, but they ignored Russell in hopes of avoiding another hostile encounter. Unfortunately, though, they wouldn't be so lucky. Just a few moments later, Russell drove up to the couple, exited his vehicle, and began shouting at them. But once again, his statements made no sense. Concerned for Wendy's safety, Robert told Russell to back off several times. Instead of complying, though, Russell grabbed Wendy's arm, causing Robert to spring into action to protect her. The men exchanged blows, and Robert fell to the ground as Russell ruthlessly continued to pummel him. In the meantime, Wendy pleaded with Russell to stop beating her husband, who she said was frail and sick. She screamed for help as Robert lay helpless on the sidewalk, unable to fight back or get up. A passerby eventually pulled Russell off of his victim, and he was arrested for assault. He maintained his innocence in court and denied that he attacked Robert, but was ultimately convicted of the charge. It's unclear whether he's been sentenced or if he faces jail time. Number 5. Santiago Vasquez. After serving in the United States Army for 23 years, John Wesley Seth Jr. settled down in Killeen, Texas, with his wife, Valerie. Located right next to Fort Hood, it's a popular area for retired military veterans. The Seths lived in a quiet neighborhood where they welcomed company from their 9 grown children and 25 grandkids. They were a church-going family who were well-liked within their community, and the couple's main goal at this point in their lives was to kick back, relax, and enjoy their senior years. For a while, things went great. The Seths initially got along well with their next-door neighbor, Santiago Vasquez, who was also a well-liked retired veteran who lived with his wife, Elodia. Santiago and John weren't close friends, but they had a habit of making small talk when they crossed paths. But their good relationship suddenly soured about a year after the Seths moved in. The differences between the neighbors started when a package that was meant for Santiago was mistakenly delivered at the Seths' residence. Unwilling to believe that the mailman was responsible for the error, Santiago began to distrust his neighbors, even though they had no ill will toward him. The men never went back to being friendly with one another after that. In fact, they soon began fighting over practically everything imaginable, including John's decision to trim some shrubs along the line dividing their properties. Santiago saw this as a personal attack, and from there on out, it was war. The neighbors complained about each other's noise, accused one another of being racist and spitting on each other's mailboxes, and they called the cops on each other multiple times, trying to get other residents to take sides in the rivalry. Some acquaintances would later say that Santiago felt as though Seth was trying to push him out of his home and the neighborhood altogether. Others believed that Santiago was mentally unstable and that he unfairly targeted Seth without having a rational reason for doing so. Either way, their inability to make amends and the breakdown of their friendship would result in a tragedy that was felt by the entire community. Tensions reached a boiling point in late May of 2017 when 84-year-old Santiago shot 80-year-old Seth from next door as he stood in his driveway. While opinions remained divided over which party was guiltier when it came to perpetuating the long-standing neighborly dispute, a jury found Santiago guilty of Seth's murder, and as a result, he was sentenced to 14 years in prison. If he lives to see his release in 2033, he'll be 103 years old. Number 4. John McEnany. Nurse and single mom Jennifer McLean moved into her home in Valley Stream, Long Island in 2017, and it wasn't long before dog waste and dead rodents started appearing in her yard. Someone also began routinely firing a pellet gun onto her property. McLean, who's African-American, suspected that her white neighbor, 57-year-old John McEnany, and his girlfriend, 53-year-old Mindy Kanarick, were behind the disturbing acts. She endured a 3-year-long campaign of cruelty and intimidation at the hands of the couple, later telling the New York Daily News that they told her and other black residents to go back to where they came from. They also threatened them with guns and wore blackface as a cruel way to taunt their victims. Authorities were well aware of the situation. In fact, they got used to responding to the numerous calls they received from McLean about the seemingly endless harassment, but it didn't seem like law enforcement took her complaints seriously. McLean became frustrated and eventually reached her breaking point. And in hopes of making the situation impossible to ignore, she posted large signs outside her house describing what was happening to her. One of the signs read, "My neighbors have been racially harassing me since I purchased my home." It contained a detailed list of the disturbing incidents that had become regular occurrences for McLean, along with the chilling closing statement, "I live in fear for my life." As word spread, community members and activists came together and marched through the neighborhood to show their support for McLean and other victims. McEnany was finally arrested after McLean bought a home surveillance camera and captured footage of his menacing behavior. His girlfriend, Mindy Kanarick, was also charged in connection with the crimes. Kanarick agreed to undergo diversity and inclusion training in exchange for a 1-year conditional discharge. McEnany pled guilty to criminal mischief and was sentenced to 3 years of probation. He had to complete anti-racism training, and the judge issued an order of protection banning the couple from having any contact with McLean. Number 3. Ron Fowler. When two short-tempered people live next door to one another, it's essentially a recipe for disaster. Such was the case for Canadian citizens Ron Fowler and George Parent, who had the displeasure of living next to each other in rural northern British Columbia. George Parent was a third-generation resident of the town of 2 Mile, and he valued his heritage, which was why he went out of his way to halt an agreement between his brother Ron Fowler and another man to sell the contents of the family's barn and split the proceeds. Instead, George allegedly kept all the materials for himself, sparking a heated dispute between himself and Fowler, which would blow up into a much bigger feud than he likely ever imagined. It's hard to know who started what, based on the stories that were told in hindsight by those with insider knowledge. As people often do in these types of situations, Fowler and parents seem to enjoy pointing the finger at one another as the alleged instigator of each incident, as well as the entire rivalry in general. Accusations between the two men flew back and forth wildly, to the point where things eventually became physical. On one occasion, Parent allegedly grabbed Fowler by the throat, and both parties constantly complained about being harassed by the other. The situation reached its breaking point in October 2017 when Fowler fired several shots at Parent with a .38 caliber revolver, striking his neighbor in both the chest and arm. Parent survived his injuries, and Fowler was charged with attempted murder, despite his claims that he shot Parent in self-defense after noticing that his adversary was sneaking up on him. The prosecution argued that Fowler ambushed Parent and accused the defendant of going out of his way to conceal his actions and the murder weapon, which he wouldn't have had to do if he truly acted in self-defense. A jury convicted Fowler of attempted murder, aggravated assault with a weapon causing bodily harm, and discharging a firearm with intent to endanger the life of another person. Then, in an ironic and tragic twist, he lost his life in an accident while awaiting sentencing. Had he survived, he would have faced up to 10 years in prison. Number 2. Michael Roberts and Andrew Carricksonne. Neighbors Michael Roberts and Andrew Carricksonne were both in their 60s when they lived next door to each other in Stuart, Florida. But their age didn't stop them from handling their petty disagreements in the least mature way possible and letting their differences escalate into deadly violence. Over time, the two established a long history of calling the police on each other with allegations of vandalism, racism, threats, poisoning, and slashing car tires. And while arriving home one day in early 2022, Roberts saw Carricksonne standing by his mailbox and allegedly moving his finger across his neck in a threatening way. When Roberts opened his front door, his dog rushed out, and Carricksonne sprayed the dog with bug spray. Roberts rushed toward the dog and also received a faceful of insecticide and fell to the ground, while Carricksonne stood over him and taunted him. Believing he'd been seriously poisoned, Roberts pulled his gun and fatally shot his neighbor. There was no camera on the property, so investigators were tasked with relying on other evidence, including documents of past encounters gone wrong, to learn the truth behind the shooting and most of the other incidents between the pair. They ultimately determined that Roberts had reason to fear for his life when he shot Carricksonne, even though bug spray is just a mild irritant. The state attorney overseeing the case ruled that based on past incidents, Robert was justified in his belief that his neighbor was unstable and dangerous. But authorities declined to press charges and closed the case. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. Number 1. Clayton Carter III. A disagreement that broke out between neighbors in West Goshen, Pennsylvania during the early morning hours of August 8, 2017 ended in murder, but there was a lot more leading up to it than one fatal confrontation. At around 7 p.m. the night before, police had responded to a call about a dispute between 51-year-old Clayton Carter III and Brooks Jennings. The fight involved allegations of video recording and cursing in one of the neighbors' backyards. The two men apparently continued to go at it, and officers were called back to the residence at about 1 a.m. During the events leading up to the second 911 call, Carter claimed that Jennings shined a flashlight in his eyes. By the time officers arrived, things had escalated into violence, and Carter had fatally shot his neighbor. Police accused Carter of pulling into his own lawn and flashing his high beams at Jennings before retrieving a handgun and firing a single bullet into his next-door adversary's head. Jennings was a GOP committeeman, but prosecutors said that they didn't think his political affiliation was a motive in the shooting. Instead, they blamed it on a long-running dispute that eventually reached a fever pitch. During Carter's trial, they pointed out that the animosity between the two neighbors could be traced back not only in the weeks and months leading up to Jennings' death, but years. In the end, Carter was convicted of first-degree murder and received a life sentence without the possibility of parole.
7. Christopher T. Anderson. In the middle of 2021, a 31-year-old man from Rhinelander, Wisconsin, pled guilty to murdering his ex-girlfriend. Christopher T. Anderson was accused of killing 26-year-old Hannah R. Miller with a gun. He was then charged with first-degree intentional homicide. According to criminal complaints filed in July 2021 against the suspect and another man named Seth A. Wakefield, someone called 911 on June 30, 2021 to report that Hannah was on the side of the road. The woman had apparently been shot and was found near the intersection of US 8 and Riverbend Road. The couple who reported the crime said they'd driven by the location earlier that day and saw a woman and a man standing next to a white SUV. Later on, they had to turn around and go home to grab something they'd forgotten. When they drove past the spot again, they noticed Hannah lying still by the road. Luckily, the couple identified Christopher as the man they saw standing next to Hannah. The complaint said that Seth allowed Christopher to stay at his apartment for weeks before Hannah, the suspect's ex-girlfriend, was killed. Seth told an Oneida County detective that Christopher planned the murder ahead of time and that he originally wanted to kill the girl's parents too. He also wanted to kidnap him and Hannah's child. Seth confessed to investigators that had helped Christopher spy on the woman from a U-Haul truck they rented, and that the suspect had maybe planned to use the vehicle to commit the homicide. He said they used the rental to drive by Hannah's apartment several times before she was killed, and he added that Christopher would have murdered her one of those times if the opportunity presented itself. On several other instances, Seth was told to spy on Hannah, and he was even given a key to her garage and a photo of her so that he could see if her car was parked. Christopher was sentenced to life in prison for the murder. As part of his plea agreement, the state will argue for his release after he serves 40 years. Seth was given 5.5 years behind bars for his role in Hannah's death. 6. Horatio Monero Hernandez. In late 2022, a man from Nashville, Tennessee was arrested after his wife discovered a hidden camera in the couple's bathroom. The woman called the Metro Nashville police after finding a video camera hidden inside a light fixture in the bathroom she shared with her 39-year-old husband, Horatio Monero Hernandez. Apparently, Horatio told her he was renovating one bathroom in the house and that she and her young daughters should take their showers in the other bathroom where the camera was found. During a conversation over the phone with his wife, which investigators say they were listening in on, Horatio admitted to placing the device. When asked why he did it, he said it was just a mistake, blaming his mental illness for the disgusting behavior. The man told police he never watched footage of the minors taking showers because he claimed the camera was never even operable. Regardless, Horatio was taken into custody for his actions. He was charged with 2 counts of attempted sexual exploitation of a minor, especially aggravated. Afterward, Customs Enforcement and US Immigration launched a detainer on Horatio, so even though he was booked into jail on a $20,000 bond, he won't be eligible for release. The case is ongoing and details are still being released. Thank goodness, the wife had the guts to call the police on her disgusting husband. 5. Ali Abulaban. In late 2021, a TikTok star from San Diego, California, was accused of killing his estranged wife after spying on her with their daughter's iPad. According to reports from the Los Angeles Times, the content creator drove to his wife's apartment on the 35th floor of the San Diego high-rise building after hearing her and another man talking and laughing together. Prosecutors claim that Ali Abulaban installed a listening device app on his 5-year-old daughter's iPad hours before the incident when he snuck into his wife's home and trashed it. Ali uploaded the app to the device and left it charging in the bedroom before leaving. At the time, he was living alone at a hotel after being kicked out of the family's former apartment. His wife, 28-year-old Anna Abulaban, asked him to move out on October 18, 2021, just 3 days before the murder. After hearing Anna and another man through the spy app, Ali raced back to the apartment full of rage. Security footage from the building showed the man running out of the elevator after reaching the 35th floor. Taryn Brass, deputy district attorney, reported to the Los Angeles Times that Ali then shot Anna's visitor, 29-year-old Rayburn Cadenas Barron. He unloaded 3 bullets into Rayburn before turning the gun on his wife, who he shot in the head. Rayburn was hit in the cheek, back of the head, and neck at very close range. When questioned by police about his motives, Ali said that he thought his wife was cheating on him even though they were separated. But Taryn Brass told the local newspaper that she believed Barron was just a friend of Anna's, not a lover. After the shooting, the murderer picked his daughter up from school as if nothing happened. But his guilt soon caught up with him, and he turned himself into authorities at 3:10 p.m. that day. He was arrested by officers on State Route 15 less than 1 hour after confessing to his crimes, with his daughter in the vehicle witnessing everything. Apparently, he told his child that he'd hurt Mummy before being taken into custody. Before the tragic ordeal, Ali made a name for himself by doing impressions of characters and actors on TikTok. He was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, to which he pleaded not guilty. He continues to be held without bail, and his trial was set for September 27, 2022. Unfortunately, there's been no recent updates on the case, and his sentencing still remains unclear. 4. Suzanne Morphew. In 2021, a spy pen helped uncover a woman's love affair after she went missing from her Colorado home the year before. Suzanne Morphew vanished in Chaffee County on May 10th, and almost 3 years later her body has still not been found. After months of searching for the woman's remains, authorities shifted the case to a homicide investigation, and Suzanne's husband, Barry Morphew, was arrested for first-degree murder the next year. But after multiple public preliminary hearings, Barry was released by Judge Patrick Murphy on a $500,000 cash-only bond in September 2021. And in April 2022, all charges against him were dismissed without prejudice, meaning that in the future he could be charged again if more evidence came forward. When prosecutors dismissed Barry's charges, a filing from District Attorney for the 11th Judicial District, Linda Stanley, revealed that investigators thought they were close to finding his wife's body. The filing claimed that law enforcement believed Suzanne's remains were in a secluded and mountainous area near the Morphews' home, under 5 feet of snow. But at the time, detectives weren't able to access the area over concerns for safety. It's now been 3 years since Suzanne went missing, and investigators are at a loss as to where her body is. In August 2021, a spy pen that the woman bought to see if Barry was cheating on her was found by an FBI agent assigned to the case. The woman planned to use it on Barry, but instead recorded a conversation between herself and her own secret lover. She deleted the recording, but the FBI was able to recover it. In the conversation, Suzanne told the other man, Jeff Libler, that she loved him. The two of them even made plans to go on a Valentine's Day date since her husband would be out of town. Since Jeff was found to have no involvement in the woman's disappearance along with Barry, the case of Suzanne Morphew remains unsolved. 3. Gayn Morris. A woman from Indiana allegedly tracked her boyfriend down with an Apple AirTag after suspecting him of having an affair back in 2022. When the two of them got into an argument about it, she ran him over and killed him. USA Today obtained a probable cause affidavit that said the 26-year-old woman, Gayn Morris, confessed that she'd used an AirTag to follow her boyfriend Andre Smith to a bar in Indianapolis earlier that month. When she went to the bar, the two of them got into a heated fight, and Gayn swung an empty bottle at the woman she discovered Andre with. This prompted the owner of the bar to kick the two of them out. Gayn then got into her car and clipped Andre, forcing him to fall to the ground. Once he was there, she backed over her lover before pulling forward and running him over a third time. After she felt like she'd done enough damage, she got out of the vehicle and chased after the woman he was meeting with on foot. But when police got to the scene, she was immediately detained. Andre did not survive from his injuries, and he was pronounced dead by the Indianapolis Fire Department on June 3rd. Gayn has since been charged with murder and is currently being held at the Marion County Jail. Unfortunately, there hasn't been any recent updates on the case, and the woman's sentencing is unclear. 2. Lawrence Welch. A 29-year-old man from Nashville, Tennessee, was charged with placing an electronic tracking device on his girlfriend's car in early 2022. Lawrence Welch was arrested for using an Apple Watch to secretly track the location of his partner. He apparently attached it to one of the woman's car wheels and used a third-party tracking app to keep tabs on her location. According to an affidavit, he was quickly slapped with charges. Based on reports from WSMV4, police showed up at a family safety center after getting a call from the family security team. They told authorities that the woman's boyfriend had shown up and that the victim was claiming Lawrence had made multiple threats to kill her since she had been visiting the safety center for a while. The man was only able to track her with help from an app called Life 360. The couple allegedly agreed to use it to monitor each other's location, but Lawrence's girlfriend said she turned off the app's tracking capabilities before visiting the center. Lawrence kept his version of the app active on the Apple Watch he attached to the wheel of her vehicle, which let him track her movements. The man is also facing 2 domestic assault charges from past incidents from July 2021. The conclusion to the case has yet to be seen, and Lawrence will be held in custody until he's sentenced for his despicable actions. 1. Paul Lewis. In 2015, a UK man started using a hidden camera to spy on his wife. He wanted to find out if she was cheating on him, but when he couldn't find any proof of an affair, he decided to keep filming for over 3 years since he knew it would annoy her. 46-year-old Paul Lewis wrongly accused his wife Anne of cheating. The suspicious husband secretly spied for years with a camera he hid in their shared bedroom. Even when it was clear to him that Anne was innocent, he continued to record her. Eventually, Anne found about 29 videos of herself in the bedroom after the spy camera was moved to the kitchen. Some of the videos were only a few seconds long, while others were as long as 40 minutes in length. In some of the clips, Paul was seen installing the camera, completely giving himself away. Anne confronted her husband about it in mid-2018, and he supposedly told her he was happy she'd found it. He told police that he kept filming her after finding no incriminating evidence because he knew it would be annoying. Not surprisingly, the couple has gone their separate ways. In the end, Paul was sentenced to 14 weeks in prison, suspended for 12 months after he admitted to harassment. He was also given a 5-year restraining order on behalf of Anne and was told to complete 120 hours of unpaid work.
Would you rather have a neighbor with a constant staring problem to the point where you can't comfortably sit outside and have to keep your blinds closed 24/7, or a neighbor with a habit of making false 911 calls against you for no apparent reason? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.